Sober Ladies. Thank you so much for joining me here in the Confident Sober Women Facebook group. I'm so glad you're here with me today. And we're going to talk about the 5 ways you can take control of your stress and overwhelm and anxiety in without substances. So on Monday, we really got into some of the reasons why it feels a lot worse to us to deal with things like stress, overwhelm, and anxiety when we're sober. And if you missed that, you can check out the live right here in the group on Monday. Some of the obvious reasons are, well, we're not numbing out anymore by using substances to kind of relieve ourselves, and then it leaves us exposed and vulnerable, and just makes everything feel a lot worse, right? So that's some of the main the reasons for that, why things are a lot harder once we get sober. So what are we supposed to do about it? Like, how do we handle all of this? How do we begin? Even if you've been sober for a long time and you feel that you have some decent tools in your toolbox, sometimes we get hit with the punches of life after we've been sober for many years. This has happened to me many times throughout my recovery, and it's important for us to have things at our disposal. So I'm going to give you kind of my 5 ways to manage stress without substances right now. Of course, there are many more ways than these 5, and you can Google it, you can talk to me about it, send me a DM, and go with it. I don't want you to roll your eyes and throw your hands up and be like, I already know all these, I've heard this before, or kind of snub your nose, because some of these are definitely repeats from things you've probably seen on social media or with your therapist or in groups. But I want you to just allow yourself to give a few minutes here. My lives are not that long typically. We're not going to get into a whole long training on this. I just want you to open your mind for just like maybe 5-10 minutes or less and just hear what I have to say, okay? So before you roll your eyes and be like, oh, I've tried that, it doesn't work, just listen to what I have to say, and then I have a follow-up opportunity for you to sort of deepen the experience and give you even more resources. All right? Are you with me? All right, so when you're dealing with stress, anxiety, and overwhelm, the number one way to manage that without substances is to use your breath. Okay, again, I know sometimes people want to just brush this off or say it doesn't work, but there's literal research to support the fact that oxygenation to the brain does work to calm our central nervous system, which is where all of the stress and tension gets built up in our bodies, okay? The reason why this is my top strategy is because it's always with you. You always have your breath with you at all times. It's free, it's a part of your body, and you can literally do it anywhere. I mean, you could be sitting in a business meeting or in a doctor's office or in a classroom and be using your breath with certain techniques to calm your central nervous system. Okay? So the main breath technique that I teach is deep belly breaths, right? It's so deep in through the nose, deep into your belly, filling it all the way up, and then slowly, slowly exhaling for 7 to 10 counts. I also say you can put your hands on your belly and kind of feel the rise and the fall of that to ground yourself in your body even more and reduce the stress even more. Again, learning how to do these effective breathing exercises will go a long way to reducing your stress and anxiety right in the moment, right? Oxygen flows into the brain. It slows down that parasympathetic nervous system that responds to stress, activates that fight or flight, makes your heart race, your sweaty palms, and starts to really increase the physical symptoms of stress. That's why this is so helpful, because we can literally in that moment begin to use our breath to calm our minds and our bodies, because oftentimes, particularly if you're somebody who struggles more with anxiety, not just stress, when we get that physical activation in the body, it creates more anxiety, because now we're anxious about the fact that our bodies are feeling a certain kind of way. And we really want to reduce that, because anxiety just breeds more anxiety. So I teach those deep belly breaths to my clients all the time. There's other ways of doing good breath work, like alternate nostril breathing, and there's different counting that you can do. There's a variety of breath techniques. Some of them, like alternate nostril breathing, is not as um, private. It's not as it's a little more obvious that you're doing something. So it would be slightly more challenging to do in a situation maybe where you are with other people. So that might not be your go-to strategy if you're sitting at work or around a bunch of other people. But it could be a wonderful strategy that you use when you're doing your morning meditation, or when you're, maybe you're even at home alone, but there's a whole lot of stuff going on and you just are starting to feel the buildup. You can jump into that. So it doesn't matter to me which one you use. I want at least one in your back pocket. The deep belly breathing, to me, is a wonderful go-to resource you can utilize any time of day, any time of night, any place. The second way to reduce your stress without using substances is to change your self-talk, right? So the things that literally are going on in your brain that happen to all of us, right? We all have self-talk. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's neutral. And for some of us, in some periods of time, things can feel way more degrading and sort of negative on ourselves. Very often, when women are building their emotional sobriety, which is the work that I do in my programs, that negative thinking pattern from their past still plagues them. Because even though you got sober for a little while, particularly if you've used like maybe a 12-step or smart recovery or therapy or whatever you use to get sober, you had some good tools, right? But we didn't, a lot of times in that early sobriety work, you don't really dig into those negative patterns of self-talk. And oftentimes they go way back. I know mine did. They started at young ages and they kind of take hold and they get going. And then we just add to them as more time goes by. And it took me anyway, years to change a lot of these patterns. And I needed a lot of guidance to do that. I couldn't do it by myself. So when stress increases, it's easy to kind of point the fingers inward, right? To turn it on ourselves, and that narrative of just negative self-talk plays over and over again. The brains of women in early stages of recovery are slightly different. Your prefrontal cortex has been impaired by heavy drinking or using. So your impulse control might not be quite online yet. It might still be lacking. And this only means that you have more work. You have to work a little bit harder to reduce your stress and not engage in those self-destructive patterns, right? So a great way for you guys to jump into this right away is in this group, in the guides section. If you go to the top of the group, underneath the banner photo, there's a menu option called guides. And in that guide section, there is a 5-day understanding your negative self-talk challenge. It's a 5-day challenge I've done in this group over the last couple of years. I've done them several times. But all the content is in there for you, and the links to the videos where you can really walk through it yourself. I would encourage you to jump over there and then work through that 5-day understanding your negative thinking patterns challenge so that you can start to really see what I'm talking about. Sometimes we think we know, right? But until we dig into the work, we really take appropriate inventory and then look at it thoroughly, and sometimes with the help of another person, then we don't always understand exactly what's happening and then really how this is affecting us, and then begin to work on a plan to change that. The third way of reducing stress and anxiety and overwhelm without substances is to connect with nature. Okay, again, I don't want you like rolling your eyes and like kind of checking out right now. Stay with me for a second. So a super fast, fun, and relaxing way to manage stress in the moment, as well as for long term, is to get outside. Okay, so this is also, again, very research based, and studies show that being in nature reduces blood pressure, it reduces stress hormones like cortisol, and it improves your mood, right? So it lifts you up. So because we're genetically programmed to seek plants and water and trees, nature really does help to heal pain and suffering, right? So you're breathing in that fresh air, you're feeling the warm or cold sun on your skin and absorbing that vitamin D, as well as obtaining all of that visual stimulation that nature provides. In addition, the Earth in general, as a planet, has a tremendous amount of energy. So when you step outside in bare feet onto the earth for 10 to 20 minutes, you're going to notice an immediate emotional shift. I was actually recommended to do that, I think a year or two ago, by a friend of mine who does some energy work, and I started doing it as part of a routine. And I'm not gonna lie, it was profound. I did this thing first with some thinking patterns and movement, and then I stepped outside without any shoes on. And I used headphones and just had very light spa music playing when I was doing it, because for me that worked. And I just walked around my yard in a super slow, really intentional, quiet, meditative way. And I looked around and I used my senses to absorb all of the things around me. And I'm going to tell you that there were some days when the tears were just flowing. I had no idea why, but the energy from the earth was pouring into me and at some level providing some deep healing. And trust me, I don't think I would have believed that if I hadn't experienced it myself. And after a few days or a week, I got playful too. I started going underneath these branches that are in this one tree outside my office. And it was like a canopy almost. It had provided the kind of, it was like a shelter. And I was going back there and imagining it was a fort, and I was this child who was hiding in this fort. And I don't know, I just let my mind go where it needed to go. And it was pretty cool, I have to say. So I would recommend, if you can get outside as often as possible, at least once a day. Now, look, I live in a cold area. It's not as cold as some places, but it's pretty chilly. We're in the teens overnight here, so it's tough. But I still go outside at least once a day, particularly in the afternoon when the sun is out. I just bundle up really tight. Yesterday it was 22 degrees. But I really enjoyed myself because I could breathe that fresh air. I felt the cool air on my face, and I was moving. So I was getting some really good movement in my life. If you can do bonus, if you can get outside on your bare feet, I would definitely recommend adding that. The fourth way of reducing stress and anxiety and overwhelm without substances is managing your sleep. So this is a toughie for a lot of us, I know. And I know that it's just no secret to any of us that good quality sleep really supports our entire bodies and minds, right? It's not a secret that research says we need, 7 to 8 hours, that it helps to restore brain function, that it increases our immune response and reduces stress. And sleep is a factor when it comes to mood regulation, right? Because our hormones are definitely affected and our adrenal glands are affected by sleep, which means if you struggle with things like a mood disorder or anxiety, depression, or you have lots of or hormonal changes, then getting high quality sleep is going to be even more important for you. It also supports weight management, believe it or not. When we don't get good quality sleep and our brain doesn't restore itself properly, our bodies tend to go into kind of a little bit of a mode where they want to hibernate, not hibernate, but hold on to that extra fat because it thinks it's in a little bit of a crisis mode. Maybe like fight or flight, but not quite like that. More like we think we're maybe there's something going on where I can't get enough quality sleep to restore myself, and so the body holds on to extra fat. So that's a really strong motivator for getting quality sleep. And just so you know, we're going to talk a lot more about that next month, because next month's all about physical health, and one week in specific is going to be sleep. And I have an awesome training I'm going to be sharing on the podcast, the Confident Sober Women podcast, so you're going to want to check that out. And the fifth way I want to share with you today for managing stress and overwhelm without substances is getting grateful. An attitude of gratitude really reduces stress in the moment as well as for the long haul. Because when we're in the middle of a challenging situation, immediately shifting your thinking to things that you're grateful for, it gives you and focusing on that changes your mood, changes your body, changes your stress immediately. Saying it out loud even up levels the experience for you, like you've just had a complete cleanse almost. It reduces the physical response that we're going to get from stress and anxiety that we talked about a minute ago, and really helps to center and ground yourself in that moment. So Anne Voskamp is my favorite author when it comes to this. She wrote the book 1000 Gifts, and to me it speaks volumes to the um, power that gratitude on a regular basis daily has for keeping us sort of sane and serene and living well in our true joy. So I would recommend getting the book if you haven't, or following her on social media. She's very impactful and has so much wisdom. She's not a woman in recovery that I know of anyway, but she does have a lot to say about gratitude. So if you're a person that likes to write that stuff down or maybe share it with another person, that's a great way to get active when it comes to being grateful. And get a journal where you can keep those every day, or share it with a friend. Maybe text message each morning and say, here's my list, or each evening. That's a great way to kind of hold yourself accountable for this as well. So these are my 5 ways to help deal with stress and anxiety without substances right now. They're the easiest things to do because you can literally step into them right now. If you're ready for a little bit more, I have this really cool video-based course called 5 Ways to Take Control of Your Anxiety in the Moment. It's super easy to follow, very digestible, and there's a little workbook that goes along with it. I left a link above. It's just shelbyjohncoaching.com/take control. And it's like I said, it's short, it's manageable, it's super easy, but very impactful because they're things you can take control of and do right now in the moment. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.